Hello and welcome to the latest episode of Preserving History and Democracy. My name is Cynthia Mendoza, Communications Coordinator for the Doña Ana County Clerk's Office. I am joined today by Bernadine Caparel, our amazing producer. How are you, Bern?
Good morning. How are you?
Morning. I'm doing great, and we have an incredible topic today. We have an interesting topic for discussion, a little group that used to live here in the area called the Faithists, and we have a special guest that's going to talk to us about it. You want to introduce our guest?
I cannot wait to.
Yes.
This is Christopher Schurtz, a New Mexican historian who focuses on the history of Las Cruces and the Mesilla Valley. A former reporter for the Las Cruces Sun News, Schurtz has a master's degree in history from NMSU and is the author of the book Historic Las Cruces. In addition to more than 100 articles about local and or regional history, he's a board member of the Doña Ana County Historical Society and Remember Baton Foundation of New Mexico. In addition, Chris has served as a historical consultant and researcher for local museums, and since 2016, he's taught courses in U.S. history, New Mexico history, and U.S. military history at NMSU and the El Paso Community College. That was a long intro.
I tried to make it longer.
I am so happy that you were here to talk about this with us today.
Well, I am too.
Welcome.
Thank you very much.
Do you want to start by telling us a little bit about yourself? I know Bern kind of gave us a little short synopsis on you, but...
Currently, I'm a professor at NMSU teaching U.S. history. How I got interested in this topic was when I was getting my master's degree back in 2008 in public history. We had to have an internship at a museum or an institution of some kind, and so I was able to get it into Farm and Ranch Museum. And at that point, they were planning an exhibit on the Shalam Colony, and particularly it's at the agricultural elements of the colony, because they do a lot of different things, sort of innovations that others weren't doing in the New Mexico territory. And so that was the focus of the museum initially, is we're going to look at the ag stuff, and it's going to be a small exhibit, and we're going to put it in the corner. And as we started digging into it, as anyone that does who digs into the Shalam Colony, it started to expand, and now we're going to put it in the big hall. And
Wow.
and off we went. And of course, we kept our focus on the ag stuff, but then there are all these other stories that are around Shalam Colony, and so we produced some articles from it, and then through the years I've done a couple other articles, and then I keep kind of looking at stuff, and then I'll find some little box and I'll open it, and there's this whole other story that's been sitting there. And
It's a large rabbit hole.
it is, and
Yeah.
it's a story that keeps giving somehow. A list of people will contact me out of nowhere, a descendant of one of these people out of nowhere.
Wow.
And then suddenly it will branch off into a whole new thing, and then I'm in it again and
That's
stuff.
very
so,
cool.
So it's been interesting doing the Shalam stuff for sure.
Cool.
So let's start with the founder. Can you tell us a little bit about the founder?
Well, so if we can turn to the PowerPoint right now, I do have, and of course you guys have this image, and that is our general image of him. John Ballou Newbrough is a dentist by trade. He's from New York, born in 1828, and has a very colorful life. Makes some money as a dentist, but then eventually gets interested in the West, in traveling. And he ends up in California during the gold rush period, and apparently makes some money doing that, and ends up in Australia, doing some gold mining in Australia, and apparently makes some kind of small fortune doing this. And then he kind of travels the world and has an interest in religious studies and spiritualism. And spiritualism is a movement of sorts that rises up in the 1800s, and it's essentially a belief in that our loved ones continue to live beyond death and can communicate with us, and not just our loved ones, but any spirit can be conjured up. And so seances and this sort of thing.
Right.
Okay, and it's actually a movement of sorts, and there are lots of branches of that movement in the 1800s, particularly after the Civil War. You see all the death and everything that happens at the time. So he sort of comes out of that. He is very active in the New York community. He moves back to New York City, and he's very active in the spiritualist community in New York City. And becomes a bit of a popular figure in that community. He's about 6'2", 6'3", so tall, and has sort of bright red hair, and he's blue eyes. He's arresting blue eyes. So he's a commanding figure.
Quite a figure,
He
yeah.
makes quite a presence walking
Yeah.
into
Right.
a room. And I don't know if he has followers exactly, but he has maybe fans or people that he garners a certain amount of respect. He's a learned, educated figure. And so sometime around 1881, 1882, by his account, now he has studied, no doubt, many of the world's religions in some manner or another. And there are different movements that are happening at the same time in the 1800s. The utopian movement, people wanting to go off and make these settlements, utopian settlements, where they will recreate a new society, kind of idea. And so he's aware of all of these things. He's knowledgeable about all these things. And so in 1881, 82, he begins writing what will become known as sort of a New Age Bible. Oahspe is called. And so we have an image of the cover of it here. And apparently, well, according to his account, he has a new typewriter. Typewriters are sort of new things in 1882. And one morning, the light sort of shines through the window, and he is guided to the typewriter and begins what's called automatic writing, which is basically where you sort of get into a trance-like state and just let it all pour out, kind of thing.
That's amazing.
And so this happens every morning for about a year, and at the end of it, he has a 900-page plus, very impenetrable to read book, a Bible of sorts. I guess we can call it a Bible, but it's really a collection of sort of a history of the world's religions. It's very difficult to explain, Oahspe.
Okay.
In fact, well, this might be helpful. So if we can look at this, this is from the cover page, or the opening page.
Mm-hmm.
So it reads, Oahspe, a new Bible in the words of Jehovah. Okay, so what he does often is he's using religious names and he'll change the spelling of certain, like, so instead of Jehovah, it's Jehovah. So there's all sorts of things like that. So he's sort of mining the text of other religions and crafting. All of the religions play a role in Oahspe.
Wow.
They're all kind of cumulatively there, sort of critical of the religions as well.
Okay.
And to an extent. But so a new Bible in the words of Jehovah and the angel ambassadors, a sacred history of the domination or the dominions of the higher and lower heavens on the earth for the past 24,000 years, together with a synopsis of the cosmology of the universe, the creation of planets, the creation of man, the unseen worlds, the labor and glory of gods and goddesses in the ethereal heavens. I could keep going.
He took it all in, huh?
Perhaps you get the idea.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, and I have attempted to read Oahspe, and I will grant that perhaps I'm not bright enough to follow it. I tried my darndest, though, because I got to figure, and I think a lot of people wanted to figure this out, or enough, not maybe a lot, but people saw this book when it was published in 1883 and felt that, gosh, there's got to be something to this stuff, because you cannot discount this book. It is not fluff. It is a layered and textured book. And so Oahspe basically is published, self-published basically by Newbrough and some benefactors. Mm-hmm. And it basically gets savaged by the critics when it comes out. I mean, it gets, but enough people, maybe about 60, 70 people, who are in this community anyway, this sort of emerging New Age kind of community, have convinced enough by this, hey, there's something in this, we want to study it some more. And so they gather in 1883 and form what is called the First Church of Tay, or the First Faithist Church, really. With Tay is the leader, T-A-E. And of course, Newbrough is the prophet,
right? And
he's the leader. And there's probably a vote done, but somehow he emerges as the leader of some kind. And so they decide not only we're going to form this church, but within Oahspe there is a place called the Land of Shalam, and it's almost a prophecy. And it's kind of it merges the past and then the future in a way, where it's almost like talking about this place in a way that it existed once, but then it's going to exist in the future. I'm trying my best to explain.
Okay.
It's kind of like that.
Right.
Okay. If you can kind of, So it's sort of a mythical place, but it's supposed to be a real place ultimately. And so they think, okay, let's go ahead and try to create this colony that's envisioned in Oahspe called Shalam. So it's Shalom, Shalam. So here we have with using these words.
The two ways together.
Yeah, the two ways together. Now later on, when the colony fails, they're going to say, oh, there's too many A's in that word. If there's too many A's in a word, then that's bad, because there's a numerology aspect to analyzing words.
Wow.
So, okay, so anyway, I digress, because it happens all the time. So they decide, okay, let's go ahead and form this colony. Now, they're probably idealistic about this, but they're probably realistic too. I mean, so off they go. So there are more than 200 communities, utopian type communities, that are attempted in the 1800s, where people, we're going to go off and create our own society, free of crime, free of greed, free of whatever you really sort of can't get free of ultimately, but self-interest and this sort of thing. And we're going to create a new society. And Oahspe sort of lays out a lot of the rules of that society. So we're going to a strict vegetarian diet, for example. That's a big component of this religion, Faithism. But there are many communities, the Shakers, the Oneidas, many of these, and most of them religiously based, to some extent. That existed. So this has been done. They're looking at the Mormons, for example. I mean, that is probably, he's getting a lot of inspiration, no doubt, from Joseph Smith. And so off they go. So why do they end up here, I think I didn't want to jump on your question. So
no, that's exactly what was coming up next.
Yeah.
How did they end up here?
How did they get here?
Places.
Exactly. From New York City. Who comes from New York City and comes to live in New Mexico?
Me.
I mean, who does that?
Just me.
So, well, when you do see a large group of people not from this area suddenly in New Mexico, you have to ask, why are they here? Because the New Mexico territory in the 1800s is not New Mexico of today. It's hard living for everybody. And it's a poor territory. And so you have to ask, why are people coming in 1800s at this time period to begin with? So why specifically? So they begin looking around for land. Now, I'm not going to try to pronounce this word, but so you can't, maybe people can't see it. And so that's probably not helpful. But there are these different cities. The great city of, there's about 23 letters.
Oh, wow.
And I was not sitting on my typewriter.
I didn't fall
asleep on it. It doesn't look like.
Wow.
So you get a sense of these different places that are in this greater land kind of thing. So anyway, so we're going to go out and find this place. So they start looking around in the West. Now, Newbrough, he's a traveler. He knows the West. He's been out in the West and stuff. And he's a Mason. And so he's contacting his fellow Masons around the West looking for land. And so he ends up, long story short, they end up in New Mexico, and they end up here, either coming through Las Cruces or deliberately coming through Las Cruces. The railroad's only been here for a few years at that point. And that's the real connector. The railroad is the real connector to civilization.
See that railroad just inside
Absolutely.
the area so much.
It's the big marker of change in the territory, because it connects you to, quote, civilization.
Right.
And it brings people like this.
People and ideas.
People and ideas, and people who feel like they can come to a place like this. Right. And that's not a small thing, because to come to New Mexico before the railroad is difficult, to say the least. So they end up in Las Cruces, and there's a story that goes out somehow that he's blindfolded, and Newbrough, and he just leads the people to this location 10 miles north, and that's just the land of Shalam. So he finds through spirit control the land. It's not like, that doesn't actually happen.
Okay,
Believe
that's
it or
a
not.
story.
Believe it or not, that does. So in truth, he meets with John Barncastle, who you might have come across that name when
I did.
So
yes.
He's a Civil War guy. He's one of these California column guys that come to the valley and stays after the war and becomes part of the community.
Right.
And he owns thousands of acres around Doña Ana. And so he's settled. He and Newbrough do a land deal. They buy about 500 acres or so, and then go back to New York. Now they're out here probably in the summer, and it was probably a wet summer because it was quite green. And being from New York City, they don't realize a very important part about farming or doing anything in New Mexico, which is you need water. And New Yorkers don't have to worry about water.
Right.
You got rain all, but out here you do. And so anyway, they come back, they gather up their crowd. Now everybody kind of throws all their money in a pot. The way this was going to work was this was going to be a communal settlement. So all things held in common. Nobody owns anything. No one's above anyone. No one's, your typical commune idea that we're all equal.
Right.
And there's no boss and there's no tyrant and all of our stuff, we're going to put all of our stuff in it together and we don't own anything kind of thing. But it's hard to shake that tendency for people. And so anyway, that's the idea. And so they all kind of get their stuff together, and we're all going to go out to New Mexico. And boy, are they shocked when they arrive. They come in October or so. And so who are some of these people? Well, of course, all these folks are Anglos, or white folks. Probably middle, upper class economically, probably educated. Most of them certainly are literate. Different ages, most of them middle age maybe, but some young folks. A man by the name of Joseph Grill, he's 25 years old. He stays with the colony almost the whole time. He actually comes out with Newbrough to look for land. Okay. They have a minor celebrity in their ranks, a man by the name of Henry Tanner, who was known, semi-famous, for fasting for 40 days.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
So diet is a big thing with these folks.
Right.
A lot of the social ills and physical ills of people at the time had to do with their diet. And boy, did they have a bad diet,
Right.
No health regulations, anything on side. And so Tanner was always about diet. And so he comes to fame for fasting for 40 days. And so he fasted for 40 days. You always see that with Henry Tanner.
Okay.
And he had his own phrase, don't dig your own grave with your own mouth. That was his slogan, right? So he's among this group. Okay, he's a nutritionist before there was such a thing. And a bunch of other folks that I have listed here. Two folks particularly. W.C. Bowman, he brings his wife and his 3 children. He might be an attorney, I think, possibly. Attorneys are not the group that we want in this colony, as it will later
Find out. Okay.
So he's one of these original folks, and a guy by the name of Jesse Ellis. He's one of these original guys, too. And both Bowman and Ellis will end up suing Newbrough and the colony.
Oh, boy.
Because of the dream is not the reality kind of thing, and promises unfulfilled.
Who would have thought?
And
Who would have thought? Exactly.
Who would have thunk it? And so out they come, okay? And among this group, too, is a woman by the name of Frances Vandewater. Or maybe her last name is Sweet. So she is Newbrough's dental assistant. Newbrough is still married.
Oh my
He's
God.
still married, but it's in a unhappy marriage. So
Okay.
there's probably some separation there. But he's still married. And so Frances comes out, and there are sort of murmurings of maybe something happening there. And that was not supposed to be something that was okay. If I can use the word kosher.
Is that right?
Sort of. It was still taboo.
Okay.
But when they end up out in Shalam, this little girl is born. Frances gives birth to this little girl.
Okay.
Name is Justine. So if you remember our image of, do you
Yes.
see a resemblance?
Yeah,
Just a
yes.
little bit with the bright blue
my
eyes
God.
Just
and
a
the
Yeah.
reddish
wee
hair.
bit. Yeah.
So the jig was up. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
definitely the prophet's child. And so anyway, but so this is Frances and this is Justine, and these are very important people. These are probably some of the more important people of the whole colony. Frances is the mother of Shalam. She'll end up, once Newbrough dies in 1891 of influenza, she'll later marry the other important figure in this, Andrew Howland. And Andrew Howland is a sort of a wealthy wool merchant from Boston. He's one of many heirs to the vast fortune of Hetty Green, who was the wealthiest woman in America at that time.
Wow.
And there are many heirs to that fortune. And so he comes from money and he comes from education. He's an educated man from an old family, the Howlands. And he is interested in spiritual studies and he's curious. He eventually becomes involved with New Thought, which is that's later on in the 1900s, kind of a New Age
Okay.
set of beliefs. And he's the Moneybags. He's the one with the money.
Mr. Moneybags.
Mr. Moneybags. He's going to pay for almost everything.
Wow.
He's going to buy all the land because you still have to purchase the land. I know you want to make a commune, but someone has to own that land.
Right.
And so he's the guy.
And I have the deed for that.
You do have the
I
deed.
do. I have John D. Barncastle
Yep.
to Andrew
M. Howland.
M. There it is, Howland. It's so difficult to read because
It is.
their
Oh, they are.
script,
Oh, they are.
You know, their script
Oh,
is beautiful,
it is.
but
so, some
it's
some of
tough.
the people recording that are great, and then others, they're in a hurry or something, and you just
yeah,
can't. And so there's several parcels that they'll buy over the years. Eventually, they'll end up with 1,400 acres of a pretty scrappy mesquite land, about 8 or 9 miles north of Las Cruces now. And so Howland, the way I see him is he's somebody of deep faith and deep pockets. Because when we look at all the things that will be done, you have to wonder, why are you expending this money and why are you doing this?
Right.
In New Mexico, where nobody does the stuff these folks are doing quite
Right.
yet. And it's because of this deep faith he has and this desire to make this work, make this colony work for these little kiddos that they're going to be adopting. So he will deplete his funds. He'll go through his fortune.
he does.
Yeah,
huh?
he's gonna he'll end up with a small amount. He'll be fine after it and everything, but he's gonna blow through most of his fortune.
Wow.
You know, in trying to pursue this dream in the desert, as it's called.
Right.
And so that parcel, this land is, as I said, about 8 or 9 miles north of Las Cruces, right next to the river. It's right next to the Rio Grande. And
Is that good or bad?
Well, what do you think? Is it good or bad?
I mean,
Both.
Both, sure.
Yeah.
Well, the thing is, the darn thing about rivers is they're kind of below the ground. You have to raise up the river so you have retention dams and you have diversion dams and stuff. That's what we have now. That's how we get the river raised up, so then we can divert it down the ditch networks and all of that.
Right.
Well, they're a mile from the nearest ditch, which is in Doña Ana, which is too far.
Right.
So here they have all of this land which, by the way, today is very fertile, very productive orchards and farmland. But at the time, this is bosque mesquite stuff, basically. The purpose of the colony is to adopt babies, unwanted babies, maybe orphan babies or just abandoned babies, let's say, and raise them under the principles of this new religion. And this is partly in response to the high number of unwanted babies and children that they had seen in New York City and these big cities. As industrialism comes in and we have this, the new urban environments, and you have all of these unwanted babies and stuff. And it becomes a bit of a thing. And so they're sort of trying to respond to that. And that's part of what's going on here. So the goal is to gather up the babies, the unwanted babies, and bring them to this new utopian settlement and raise them from babies to up. It was felt, as I said, the adults are already too far gone. They're already corrupted, but we need to start with the babies.
Start with
so
the
they wanted
babies.
they wanted to give them this new religion.
Sure,
and-
start them
right.
from here, and it's kind of like the ground zero kind of thing of idea. Let's start, start them anew.
Right.
So we can maybe get more into that later. So under the colony, so there's that. We're going to raise these babies, strict vegetarian, a vegan really diet. We would call it vegan. They called it vegetarian. So no meat at all. So according to the First Church of Thai Articles of Incorporation, which you guys might even have,
I think I have it.
if you can read them. So what they'll end up doing is, so Howland owns the land, but he transfers the land over to the church.
Right.
Sort of like a trust kind of thing. But he's still there's a clause where he can take the land back.
Okay.
So he really still kind of owns it.
Oh, ye of little faith.
Yeah, I know. I am, perhaps. And you do see some of these names here. Jesse Ellis. Okay, there's Newbrough. There's Henry Tanner. There's Joseph Grill, who I mentioned, and there's Francis. So all those folks I mentioned are
Right there.
are the original trustees.
Wow.
And so the articles say that no meat, nor fish, nor butter, nor eggs, nor cheese, nor any animal food save honey shall ever be used upon any part of the property, excepting that milk may be given to children under 5 years of age. All adults, excepting invalids, shall have but 2 meals a day.
Wow.
Invalid being someone who's sick or ill. So 2 meals a day of strict vegetarian food.
Wow.
And I'm the opposite of a vegetarian, so that sounds like a long day to me. But that's the diet these children get raised up in, meat being the source of evil and everything. So they end up with 1,400 acres. And again, the land, okay, so when they arrive here, they go and talk, and Newbrough goes and talks to the local newspaper. And the newspaper is a character in this. The Rio Grande Republican is one of the characters of the Shalam story because they're covering everything.
Okay.
I mean, there are dozens, if not more than 100 articles about Shalam Colony just here locally. This is national news.
Was that because they were a little freaked out by them coming?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Everything about them is newsworthy.
Was the Oahspe already kind of nationally known at this point?
No,
Okay.
but you do see a lot. They're pretty good at getting their stories into the newspapers.
Right.
So they actually promote the colony. So you'll see a lot of, hundreds of stories of the colony in papers from California to New York to whatever.
Wow.
Usually the similar stories. So I think they're getting the stories on the wire kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
But anyway, so it is out there, but covered almost daily
Wow.
here. And so when they first arrive, it's almost like population 2,000-3,000 people here in the county, or maybe a bit more than that. But small community, the more the merrier. So anyone coming here, usually it's like good.
Right. Welcome.
Yeah.
But these folks immediately are odd. Okay, and Newbrough is sort of he. Some people follow him, and some people. He has a way of maybe grating on people or getting under some people's skin somehow.
Okay.
It's something about his manner is very, maybe pretentious or maybe whatever it is. So you see that, you read between the lines or don't even have to in most of the coverage. It's very, so for example, this first headline, when they first come, Newbrough goes in and talks to the newspaper about this grand plan for Shalam. And there's a huge article about it. And he's talking about hanging gardens and libraries and streams flowing and the children playing and thousands of children and all this sort of stuff.
Right.
So they're kind of like,
Sure.
really? So it says, Shalam, the name of a new colony started near Doña Ana, quote, the coming race who are here to regenerate the earth and show us how to live purely and righteously. That's the headline. So you can kind of see in that a little bit of both things. Of like, okay, but these folks are...
Right. Off their rocker.
Yeah, maybe a little. But it's Newbrough that seems to kind of get under some people's skin somehow, I think. So this photo, if we can... I know you all, maybe you guys can't see.
We'll show all this too.
So this is the first picture we have of Shalam. And so when they first are there are maybe about 2 or 3 dozen people. And you can imagine their feelings when they finally come out to this area and see it, which is not the land of Shalam they were thinking they were coming into.
Yeah.
It's not paradise, huh?
Yeah. And so they set up some tents, and so in this image you see a couple tents. There's Henry Tanner's tents, and there's some labeling of some of these. There's a few little adobes, so this is probably early 1885 is what I'm guessing. And and there's this larger tent that's Newbrough's tent.
He gets a nice
But
tent.
I thought we were all supposed to have the same tent. Okay,
Right.
so there already were...
You missed the memo.
They did. He wrote it, but he missed it. And some of these little adobes that are here. And so the adobes aren't built by these colonists. They're built by people from Doña Ana. And where everyone is supposed to be doing the work in this communal colony, these are city slickers from New York. They don't know how to farm. They've never seen a shovel, for example. And they don't want to see a shovel. So the work that's supposed to be done by the colonists all in common doesn't end up getting done. And so Newbrough and Howland have to hire folks from Doña Ana to do all of the work that we're going to see here. Almost all of it that we're going to see in this are these folks from Doña Ana being paid $1 a day.
Wow.
So in this image too, and you probably can't see it, and I'm unhelpfully pointing at the screen here, but there is a wheel that you can see. And so what this is a wheel of a steam traction plow, or maybe a tractor, we might call it. And so what they start doing is right away figuring out how are we going to make that desert parcel, or this scrappy bosque, farmable. And the problem is with the river, is there's the river, but how do you get that water up onto your land
Right.
to irrigate? It's tantalizingly there, So how do you do that? And you can't dam up the river at that point to lift it. Can't tap into the ditch. It's too far away. And so they try a couple different wells, not wells, but pumps, water pumps, that they'll either place in the river itself or in an inlet that kind of comes out to pull up the water. And those are innovations. Nobody's done that here. Who has the money for that in New Mexico?
Right.
So again, the money, the faith, the need to achieve this. So that's what's driving all of these expenditures. So the wells, the pumps rather, they work at first and then they both fail. One of them gets sucked into the quicksand or something, gets pulled in, and another one these are complicated machines too. And these guys don't know how to fix this stuff. So they fail, ultimately. This first spring, though, it's pretty promising. It's a promising start. There's an article here where they're talking about the improvements at Shalam, and look what they're doing. There's these pumps that are interesting and we haven't seen before. And they're succeeding at first. It looks like they're doing it. And then this new steam-powered traction plow. These are pretty new machines. They've been around for a little while, but these are new machines. They're complicated machines. It's like a locomotive on 4 wheels. You need a mechanic or two to even operate these. What the old term for mechanic, meaning the guy that knows everything about that. And so apparently they do make use of at least one. Now, later accounts will say they had 3 or 4 steam plows running around, and we've never found any accounts of that. So I think there's a lot of myth in the Shalam stories. There's a lot of things that are false that appear in articles. There's all sorts of that stuff.
Just makes it more mysterious.
It makes it more mysterious, but also where's the truth in all of it? So you're always trying. So it's always about trying that particularly. Like, what's the deal with the steam plow, and how many did they have? Because nobody had these in New Mexico. And they use it apparently a little bit, and we think that it's too sandy out there. This is really for more like busting up sod in the Midwest and whatnot. I mean, it's just not the right machine. It probably gets stuck in the sand, and no one knows how to fix it, and it sits there, and we don't even know what happened. This picture is not of, we don't know what kind of plow they had, just to represent. Okay, and so so the paper says, in April of 1885, they are introducing many new methods of farming and making innovations in the old manner of cultivating the Rio Grande Valley. Their experiments will be watched with interest. So it's promising. Okay. They're a little odd, but they're doing stuff none of us are doing, and why not? They order thousands of grape vines to plant out here from California. And they try to plant some other odd kind of crops that are not grown around here. All of them will end up failing, because the pumps give out by the end of the summer or so. So that initial promise, and this is the theme of Shalam. Here we're trying this stuff, we're going to try it, hopes are high, and they just fail. For different reasons. And so they try all these different things, and going into late 1885, you can imagine some of these colonists are still living in tents. They're wondering when the kingdom of Shalam is coming, and nothing's happening. And Howland is footing the bill for everybody's food. And stuff, because you have to eat, of course, and they're thinking, well, we'll study the Oahspe, but what else are we doing? The days grind on, and so meanwhile, work is being done and is completed in early 1886 on this building called the Fraternum, which you have here in that image. So it's called the Fraternum. It's a 40-room, with more rooms than that, but 40 living quarters. Rooms equipped with a mattress and a stove, a heat stove, indoor, not quite indoor plumbing, but sort of. You might see in this image, not that image, but the image on my screen, the windmill that they have back there in a big tank. That's unusual. I mean, we have windmills here, but the size of it and the fact that it's piped into this rather large, sprawling building. This must be the largest building in this area at the time. It must be. I can't think of any one bigger. And there's a library in it. There's a kitchen area. And this was supposed to be to house the colonists, the people that were going to be coming by the scores.
And the babies?
Well, the babies are going to be in a different residence. They're going to be in a different building, the children's home, which will come next. They don't have any babies yet here, so it's already 1886, and where the orphans were supposed to be adopted. So the colonists are starting to get disgruntled here. They're starting to peel off. This is the inside of the fraternum. So inside there's this big courtyard area, I suppose, and there's some fig trees planted, and there are water pumps all around the inside for people to pump the water. That's the indoor plumbing part.
Gotcha.
Okay, which is unusual. That's a lot of money being spent. This building was built by almost entirely labor from Doña Ana, from mostly men and some women from Doña Ana, that they paid to build this. It's an adobe structure. And I love, I don't have the other one. So for Doña Ana, the village of Doña Ana, Shalam is sort of a godsend. It's a very poor community in Doña Ana. It's strictly farming, subsistence ag, really, in Doña Ana. And so they paid workers $1 a day, which is a decent labor wage for the time.
Right.
And they're the ones that clear all that scrub and all that bosque and make this farmable. They're the ones that build the fraternum and some of these other houses and structures they have out there. And so even the newspaper says the advent of the Shalam Colony has been hailed as a blessing to the people of Doña Ana. They're paid $1 a day, and the distribution of such amount of funds in this slow-going town has been something heretofore unheard of. Mary Jane Garcia, in her master's thesis that she did in the 1980s, talks about this too. And she wrote about Doña Ana in her master's thesis, and she talks about Shalam and how important it was, that infusion of money into that community. So between 1884 and when Howland is finally gone from the property, they employ more than 200 people in a community of roughly 300 or 400 or something like that.
Wow, everybody.
I mean, everybody got a little bit of work from Shalam. Okay. In fact, in the church in Doña Ana, the great, fantastic church that's in Doña Ana, they still have the bell that came from the Shalam Colony. The Shalam Colony had this bell in one of their temples that you can ring, and it's from 1886, and so the bell is actually in the bell tower.
How cool!
Of the
We
church there.
actually just had an episode too with Mr. David Thomas,
Yeah.
and we kind of just walked through Doña Ana, and he was telling us about that bell, so it's pretty
good.
cool to see
Oh, good.
that
It just all ties together.
Dave knows
awesome.
quite a lot.
Yes.
He is the most prolific writer. He's
amazing.
great.
How cool!
Have you had the folks in from Doña Ana Village, the preservation group?
Yes.
We
Yeah,
had
you did too.
Triano, Apostle. He was the secretary, right?
I believe he was the secretary of the group. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean they
So
are
well
really
spoken.
Yes.
they're really great, and what they're doing out there is just, I mean,
It's amazing.
and that's what it sort of takes, is a few people to kind of really go the extra mile and do these kinds of things. They don't just happen, you know.
Right.
Oh yeah.
So it's fantastic. So, here's the fraternum built. Here we go. We're ready. And where's everybody? By early 1886, the colonists had started to leave already. Some of Newbrough's closest friends who'd come out with him are like, okay, we're out of here. We can't handle the suffering anymore, or whatever. And Newbrough, it turns out, according to these colonists, and they start peeling off, and they go to the Rio Grande Republican and start airing the dirty laundry right away. So there's a bunch of articles in 1885, 1886, and there's this back and forth where Newbrough will then respond in a long article, and then W.C. Bowman is one of those founding people.
Right.
He writes a lot about how terrible Newbrough is, and he's a tyrant, and he runs the colony like some kind of despot. And even worse, sometimes he sneaks off and eats an egg. And Bowman caught him doing it too.
Blasphemy.
That's, well, if you're going to have the thing, no eggs.
No eggs.
And you can't have the prophet eating an egg. I mean,
Right.
unless there's a new addition to Oahspe where eggs are permitted, which actually does happen. But anyway.
Does it?
Well, kind of. A little bit. Yeah, what did we say? No eggs? We meant, well, one egg.
Sometimes.
But anyway, that kind of thing. It's like, okay, we've just been sold a bill of goods or something. And whatever else is happening with people and their change of mind with this. And so that begins happening in 1886. And eventually, so the church is incorporated. The land deal happens, and then all that land is put over to the church, and then they're incorporated in the end of 1885. So, but anyway, early 1886, these colonists are now leaving. And some of them are going back to New York. Some of them remain basically followers of Faithism. They still believe that there's something in Oahspe. They just don't think Newbrough is the guy. And they think the way it's been run has been, mistaken and everything. But even worse, some of them will end up suing. So some of these original trustees, Jesse Ellis particularly, and then he gets W.C. Bowman to be his attorney, and a couple other colonists
joined this same suit, and they sued Newbrough, and I guess Howland as well, the trustees really, alleging fraud and deceit and all these sorts of things. And so that lawsuit goes forward. In 1888, now this is way later, at that point, there are basically no colonists left by 1888. But we'll come back to what Newbrough was doing at this time period. But eventually, a Doña Ana County jury very quickly rules in favor of Ellis and against Shalam.
Right.
Because you can imagine the jury and Doña Ana at this point has been reading all about Shalam and like, we can't wait to,
Right.
for the, probably. It actually ends up being appealed, ends up in the Supreme Court, New Mexico Supreme Court. And in 1891, the Chief Justice issues this ruling, and it's too much to get into, but the ruling is sort of noted. He overturns that ruling and rules in favor of Shalam. Basically says you all should have known. You all seem like you have enough sense.
Right.
But it's a long, multi-page ruling, and it's very sarcastic, but in a 19th century way where it's difficult to understand what he's, because he goes off on this whole thing and he really mocks religion. He mocks everybody involved with it. Wow. It's kind of a noted ruling in a way because of that in some ways. But anyway, so there went that law. So they're suing Shalam. The colonists are out of there by the end of 1886 or so. There were only at its peak, only about 44 colonists, we think.
Wow.
There's a New Mexico census in 1885 that gives us a good idea who was here. The U.S. census of 1890, by the way, is gone. There's no U.S. census of 1890, so we don't know who was here in 1890. But we know that by 1886 or so, there may be about a dozen people left.
That's it.
And that's it. So Newbrough, Francis, Henry Tanner, those core people. And the local paper couldn't be more happy about this. With each colonist leaving, they're always reporting another two have left what they call the colony of cranks. Cranks is the 1800s for cuckoos. Okay. So they're constantly calling Shalam the colony of cranks, and the cranks out there in Shalam, and now they've really lost their mind. So the paper reported in June of 86, they are a set, they're talking about the Shalamites, they are a set of cranks and have expended money in injudicious experiments, devoting more attention to a fantastic creed invented by Newbrough, the founder, than to farming. Which is, how could he not focus on farming?
Right.
Anyway, there's an article here about all the farm implements in the barn being set on fire by somebody or something like that. So then it's just nothing but bad news that's happening to these people.
Are the babies there yet?
Well, okay, so this is where the babies will come in.
Okay.
The lawsuit is going through the courts. Newbrough decides, I got to get out of town, basically, anyway. And we do need to start gathering up these babies.
Right.
So that will happen here next. I wanted to point out that one of the things that kind of gets a lot of attention is, so think your 60s commune, maybe a little bit. And there's a lot of similarities here.
Yes.
So they start wearing a certain kind of clothing out on the colony. They call Chinese pajamas. So imagine like kind of a loose-fitting, monochromatic, usually white, loose-fitting shirt and pants. Mm-hmm. And so that's kind of already they're weirdos wearing this.
Right.
So here's one of the notices in the Republican. The lunatic asylum known as the Shalam Colony is getting worse and worse. There are now about 12 members, part of whom have adopted a costume to correspond with that worn in early ages. They wear sandals and a long gown, allow their hair to grow and hang down about their shoulders.
Ooh, those hippies.
And hold on to this, and go bareheaded.
Oh.
Because you got to wear a hat.
In the
it's
desert.
uncouth to go around without a hat in the 1800s.
Okay.
So they go bareheaded out there.
It's an interesting choice to wear those shoes too in the desert.
Well, you would think it's you get the sand in your little guys there. And it says Newbrough is a very familiar figure in Las Cruces. He has assumed a style of dress that makes him resemble a huckster in an Eastern market. At home, it is very evident that he is the supreme ruler. So when doing this exhibit for the Farm and Ranch, we didn't have any real images of these folks. What was this outfit that they were wearing?
Right.
And we didn't have anything of Newbrough. either in his outfit or at Shalam itself. And this is the image we have, basically, and there's a couple other like portrait shots of them, but no pictures of them at Shalam. Because we thought that would be great to have that. And we do know there are all these photographers that go out to Shalam. There's several different photographers go out and shoot all these pictures. That's what that one came from, and so it's tantalizing. Like, where are these pictures?
Right.
And so, so when I was teaching New Mexico history at NMSU last year, I was looking for cool pictures of New Mexico and stuff, and I found a website that sells photos and stuff, and in it was this image I came across, and I went past it first, and then I went back and looked at it again, and it says, the caption says, Dr. Tanner in his home in the Mesilla Valley. And so then I looked at it again, and I said, I can't believe it. So here is this image.
Wow.
And so for us, we historians, Shalam historians, this is, I mean, you don't find these little chunks of gold like this.
Yes.
So here is an image of Henry Tanner in his Shalam outfit.
There it
this
is.
loose-fitting outfit with a jacket, bareheaded, as they say, salacious. And there is the prophet Newbrough himself in his
There he
outfit
is.
with the Chinese style shirt, I suppose you'd say, and the sandals and everything.
Wow.
That's a
And
great find.
sitting in front of the fraternum. Nice close-up shot of the fraternum, which we also don't have the facade of. Look at the windows. Imagine the amount of windows. Windows are not a very common thing in New Mexico territory until the railroad. The railroad's one of those things that brings in things like wood frames and windows and all. Not to say no one had windows, but it wasn't common. And imagine the size of this building. Each room has its windows and this ornate sort of frames and everything.
Yeah.
Money. And here's a nice shot of it. You see the wall and the grittiness of it and everything. The little dog back here, his name is Frappy. That's
Frappy.
Andrew Howland's dog.
Wow.
So Andrew Howland's probably somewhere in there reading Oahspe. No doubt trying to figure it out. I'm going to get this. But this is one of the more exciting things for...
What a fun
As a
time.
historian, you know these pictures are out there and
Yeah.
in someone's box in some attic somewhere and they don't know
crazy.
what they have. So there he is. So there's all that, but you have these lawsuits and everything, and so Newbrough decides, okay, we need to get out of town, basically, and so he and Francis and a couple of the other Faithists head out to New Orleans, okay, to start gathering up what he called the babes, okay, and so in Oahspe it says, go seek and bring out of Uz. Usually Uz is the outside world, outside of Shalam. So people who are not Faithists are Uzians. Okay. So go out and seek the Uz orphan babes and castaway infants and foundlings. So not necessarily orphans, just unwanted babies. And these shall be thy colony, which shall be my new kingdom on earth. See the biblical kind of.
Yes.
And so they set up a house in New Orleans. There's a sign apparently on it that says, babies wanted, no questions asked. And so people perhaps brought a baby and left it on the front door. But they actually know a lot about who these babies were and their parents. So in some cases, they actually knew who the parents were.
Wow.
But all the children are given names taken from Oahspe. So no Bob, no Nancy, anything like that. So we have Nina, we have Fiatasi, we have Bohu, Pathides, Haja, Wada, Haverlo.
Wow.
There is one African American child by the name of Thale who is taken in. They're trying to be multiracial about this kind of thing. There's a child of mixed race, a Creole by the name of Bohu. It might be Chinese mixed race of some sort. And so they are brought here. They publish a newsletter called The Castaway, which promotes the colony and talks about the colony, really hypes it up, probably overhypes the colony at this point. And so they set up this home, and ultimately they will gather about 12, maybe 13 children, we think. And they bring them back in 87. So they're gone for about a year and a half or so. And the trial goes ahead with Howland being the only Faithist left. So Howland is left to represent and everything. And so they eventually return with these kids. 3 of these kids die either on the way or soon after of cholera. So this picture we have is the first 10 of these orphans. We call them, we say orphans, and even though probably most of these kids weren't orphans technically, but just collectively. They would have called them waifs.
Waifs. My mother used that word all the
Did
time.
they really?
Yeah.
So it kind of referring to, I don't want to say unwanted children because, that's judgmental somehow.
Right.
But just unhoused children. I mean, I don't know what was
Right.
the thing for it. But, and it's 3 of these girls will end up remaining with the Howlands after the colony is closed. And they grow up here. They marry local men and anyway. So in terms of these kiddos, there are several different accounts about how do these kids do out in this colony anyway? I mean, how is it? And so this great account from 1894, and there are lots of folks that will go out to the colony. This happens a lot. The colony is this sort of showcase by the 1890s of agricultural stuff, and people go out and visit the Shalam Colony all the time, to see what they're doing and everything. And so this is one of these accounts from 1894 from a guy named Elias Day, and he says their clothing consists of a little linen tunic, and they wear no hats or shoes. They receive a bath twice a day. So bathing is a
Wow.
big thing for these folks.
Pure.
But no religious teachings of any kind. The Shalamite religion is, we should imagine, on too high a plane to be grasped by a child's intellect, or my intellect too. But anyway, because it goes over my head. But the children look healthy, although not robust. We have made several visits to the colony and never saw one of the children crying or looking unhappy. They're always running about at play and are the most cheerfully obedient lot of children we ever came across. This is saying a great deal in favor of the system of management when one considers the parentage of these children. And one only has to look at their faces to tell that the Ishlamite instinct still lurks within. So Ishlamite instinct is kind of referring to, these children coming from these possibly poor backgrounds. Ishlamite is the wanderer. Is the restless sort of soul. So this idea that even though they're being raised like this, still lurking within them is this instinct to rebel, to cast away, whatever. Unclear what he means exactly, but you can kind of get a sense of. And so you're asking about where are the kids going to stay? Well, this is the children's home. And so this was built next. This is built of brick fired out at Shalam. So they actually make their own red bricks. They contract with some guys from El Paso to make this brick. So there's actually a foundry out there. And it's a sprawling building in itself, 10, 15 rooms or so, bedrooms for the children, a big open area in the middle that's kind of like the gathering place where they'll do teaching and they'll do playing and stuff like that. And this is where eventually everyone's going to live. They're going to live in this children's home. The Howlands will live there. It's nicer than the Fraternum. The Fraternum, the roof leaks.
Oh, boy.
People talk about how creepy it is. No one wants to stay in the Fraternum.
Okay.
I mean, it's dirty, whatever. The children's home is the place you want to live if you can. So red brick building, completed in 1890. And another building that was completed is called the Studio. It's a 2-story, more like a house. Now, this is the only structure still standing.
To this day.
To this day on the property. And of course, it's on private property, local. I hesitate to give too much because the owner's been nothing but cool about all this, but he's not necessarily all about letting people onto his It's a functioning pecan operation.
Gotcha.
So he's not necessarily about to open it up to the public. And besides that, the building is close to toppling over at some point. But he knows we historians are watching that and don't want him to tear it down. So I think he's like, okay, I won't tear it down, but it's kind of a menace to me.
Right.
It's a safety hazard.
Yeah.
Right.
And but it's still standing.
That's amazing.
And this was Newbrough's studio, and he does some painting and some work in there. But in 1891, April of 1891, influenza had swept through the valley and killed a few people. And Newbrough and everyone in the colony contract influenza, and Newbrough does and dies in April of 1891. There had already been at least one colonist that died out at Shalam, maybe 2 adults. And then these little babies who either died on the way or out there, we don't know. And so there was a little cemetery out in Shalam.
Okay.
And so they buried Newbrough out there. And they had the Masons came from Las Cruces and did the Masonic ceremony for the burial. And they did their own. And so he was buried out there. And then later on in the 1900s, I think in the 20s, his daughter, Justine, moved his body to the Masonic Cemetery,
Very
which is
cool.
where this tombstone is.
That's
Wow.
amazing. There's so many people there.
In the Masonic? I know. Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah. No, it's
Wild.
just it's a little history
We're going to
book.
have to go.
Yeah, do a little haunted tour.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Let's do
well,
it.
and you've had Sal in here too.
We have,
So
yes.
he's actually involved with some folks that
Yeah.
that work with the cemeteries and
Okay.
stuff like that.
Very
It might
cool.
be a good.
So yeah, it's a history book, that cemetery. It's just, so Newbrough dies in 1891.
His poor wife.
Yeah. Yeah. Frances is the struggling. So she's the energy that keeps it all going, I think. I think that's maybe a common story. The strong woman there keeping the whole
Right.
thing going, frankly. And but Howland's there now too. And so what happens now then is they publish a new edition of Oahspe, and in it is a few new newies, those images of the orphans and some discussion of the colony, and this new idea that they're going to call Levitica, which I'll get into in a minute. But so here's Howland in his Shalam clothing. So here's another image, and here's his dog Frappy. So remember, little Frappy. So here's Shalam in his clothing in El Paso. So he often goes to El Paso. At one point, he's arrested, apparently, for indecency because of his outfit.
Uh-oh.
Wow.
Well, look how indecent that outfit is. I mean, that would still get attention if someone was walking around in the...
That's true.
I mean, a little bit. But he's a little different. He's seen differently than Newbrough. He doesn't have the same manner. This is a sort of modest, very soft-spoken guy. He gets on everyone's good side, basically. So you don't see the same talk about it. But here is an account from the Tribune. In 1893, Mr. A.M. Howland, a representative member of the Shalam Colony of vegetarians and purists located near Doña Ana, attracted a good deal of attention on our streets yesterday by his full Chinese dress. A number of celestials gathered about him to see the Meloan Chinaman. So Meloan meaning white, the white
Right.
Chinaman. Howland is the man that's going to make all of these things happen. Prior to Newbrough's death, they might have had a small garden, but nothing they tried had worked, so nothing had been done, really. So after Newbrough's dead, they publish a new thing of Oahspe, and then after that's done, Newbrough sets his sights on making Shalam a profitable, functional place for these orphans. I mean, that's the goal here, is to make this thing not a money pit,
Right.
but profitable for the orphans, so they have a trade and everything. And but hey, he's from Boston. He comes from some wealth anyway, and he's not going to just rough it out here. So they bring out all sorts of stuff, teas and plates and the niceties of life and all those things. He's a gentleman. He's not going to just, but he does work every day. He's out working. Okay. He works 12 hours a day out there working, doing all this sort of stuff. They install on the left in this image, you see a rather unusual setup here. There are 7 windmills that feed into 2 15,000-gallon tanks. Now, these are like industrial-sized tanks. The railroads might use one of these. And he has 2 of these, and these feed water into the children's home and the fraternum, and a series of gardens that are around the children's home. So this is just for that. So 7 windmills, when most people in the territory have 1, maybe, if they have one. The windmills are tapping in, there are 2 sources of water that they will draw from. They give up this idea of pumping from the river directly. So there's 2 sources of water and so there's the groundwater, which is sort of the water table. And that's the layer that you could tap into back then, maybe going down about 10 or 12 feet. Even 20 years ago, you go down 10 or 12 feet and you hit water. Now you don't hit, the water table is gone.
Yeah.
So Bern Lake, for example, Bern Lake used to have water in it,
Yeah.
and it's all gone. Okay, right. So there's that layer of water. Then there is the actual aquifer, which sits below maybe a layer of strata or whatever, that is now being tapped into all the time, right? But nobody had tapped into the aquifer itself, the Messia Bolson itself, until Howland. Because no one has the money or the
Right.
need or all the reasons to do it. He has the need, the desire, and the money to do it. So these wells are just groundwater or water table tapping into that. Okay,
And that's really just for the garden area. But so this next image shows the big innovation that is credited to Shalam, and that is they will be the first to tap into the actual aquifer, which is where we get all of our water, our drinking water now. Is municipal wells going down about 1,000, 1,500 feet or so. So he's the first to do this, okay? And
Did people look at him like he was crazy?
I think people might have a little bit, but I think they're also, he gets people's respect somehow.
Okay, good.
He comes across as somebody that's not just doing this for nothing, that they're curious about this. This is fantastic. A lot of people who are farmers are like, they're watching this.
They're
like,
interested.
wow, because they don't have the money for this.
Right.
So what he's going to end up doing, might see in this image, might be able to make it a little bit here. So what he'll do is he will sink a well that is like your when you think of a well being like that cylindrical kind of well that goes down and it fills with water and you bring up the water with a bucket. So it's sunken well. He'll do that. Now that's not how anybody does it now at all, but that's how they'll do it. They will build a 30-foot deep, 16-foot wide. This is a massive structure, and sink that sucker into the ground. And when we were first when we did the exhibit at the Farm and Ranch, we knew about this, but we didn't know a whole lot about how they did it. And later on, I was working with the current property owner. The well is still there. And he was thinking about preserving it as something, and so we went out to look at it and everything. And then I started digging into it, and I found all these sources that we somehow missed the first time around, completely explaining everything about how they made this thing. And it's amazing. Wow. It's amazing. This is just a highly unusual thing. And so anyway, so here's this sunken well, and then they went an additional 30 feet down. They pounded these pipes down an additional 30 feet down from the bottom of the well, total of 60 feet, and that's when they hit the aquifer. And then the well fills up with water, and then they use a pump to pump that water out into a series of ditches. He has about 300 acres of land cleared, the old school way with mules, shovels, and people. And he puts in place a municipal size well, a municipal size pump that would be used like in Boston. It's called the Dean pump. It is massive. It's the biggest pump and well in the west of the Mississippi.
Wow.
Including everybody, and he's got it. And so there's different different sources of that claim that are government, lists, and you see this well just standing out like a sore thumb. I guess what? And you see in this image here, this steam-powered thing, and you can't really see, you guys can't see this, and maybe no one will be able to, but the scale of it, you can see people in this image, and they're tiny, and so there's that. That is an innovation. Largest pumping plant in the territory, largest in the West. It fed into a reservoir, a asphalt-lined reservoir, which covered about an acre. This was also, nobody ever did this out here. Times of drought, times of low water, hey, let's store up this water.
Right.
And this is not something that's replicated. That doesn't really work too well. So here is this massive reservoir. That's another innovation of like, wow, they're really doing this sucker. And there's an image from the 40s of this well. You get an idea of it, brick lined. It looks about like this today. It still has water in it. I mean, you could still probably use this well if you wanted to do it like that, but it's not practical for now. They blow through a quart of wood a day, that pump. A quart of wood is a lot of wood.
It sure is.
A quart of wood is a winter supply of wood out here. A quart of wood a day. So start thinking about the expense of this.
Right.
Start thinking about all these expenses adding up. Okay. So here's all of these innovations. We have 300 acres of land, but still the colonists, we're supposed to have all these Faithists out here. Well, the prophet's dead, and you can see why perhaps that would have petered off anyway. But there were still some people coming out. There were a handful of Faithists coming out, but not enough. So still needing to employ these folks from Doña Ana. So they come up with Howland, and this is in the new Oahspe, of a colony called Levitica. They're going to call Levitica. Levitica is going to be away from Shalam proper, still on their land, but away from it. And it's specifically designed to attract people who aren't necessarily Faithists.
Okay.
Who will still contribute to the colony. He builds 20 houses, so little small houses, and you can't quite see it in this image very well. This is the best image we have of Levitica. It's a copy of a copy. But anyway, so he builds these small houses. People can stay in them for free. There's no rent. No one is paid for their labor. They're given an acre of land to garden or produce whatever they want to produce from it. Fruit trees, plumbing. So they got water, fresh water, which is not necessarily common in Mexico at this time. The only people that cannot come now, so all races are welcome, genders, everybody's welcome. The only people that are not are, quote, people who are excluded, who live by their wits, like politicians, lawyers, preachers.
Oh.
We don't want any of those folks. I just love that. Those who are excluded are people who live by their wits. I just love that. And they had a common store, so not a co-op exactly, but a common store for those who are working on the colony, and for these Levitican folks that Howland stocks with food and everything. And because what had happened in Doña Ana allegedly was people would work out there and they're jacking up the prices, the local merchants from the Shalam people. So this is a way to get around it. So that's probably the first common store, I would say, probably in our area. It says, but according to the charter, the Leviticans will demonstrate a new order of things. This organization will establish a condition of society where poverty and crime cannot enter. More on the crime in a second. Embodying the principles of cooperation with both communal and private living. The Shalam Colony at this point was a frequent target of thieves. And people would go out and take stuff, and they were, Howland is a Quaker by birth, and so they hesitate to prosecute people and going after people and stuff. So it starts to become kind of like this buffet for people
Oh,
to go
wow.
out. So this is Joan Howland. So Joan, she's born Justine. And she's eventually going to change her name. She'll refer to Andrew Howland as her father.
Okay.
Because he becomes more of a father than Newbrough was in any case. And she changes her name to Joan Howland. So she doesn't take the Howland because that letter A that's in there.
Yes.
So there's this whole belief in numerology, and having too many letters of A in a word or a name is weakening. So anyway, so she will eventually be called Joan Howland. And she gives an oral history in 1960. So there's a recording of her that was done in 1960 when she's in her late 70s or so, by a Faithist guy by the name of Wing Anderson. And it is the whole thing. It's about an hour long. The whole thing is fascinating. Just you can't even believe you're hearing what you're hearing from, first of all, a person from the 1800s, but this person.
Right.
And she knows what she's doing, and she is a no-nonsense kind of broad. I guess we can say that word.
Okay.
She is one of these, so she has a lot. She defends Howland and Shalam to an extent, but she has a lot of bitterness about Newbrough and about Faithists in general. Yeah. And so she'll go from ripping into Faithists and calling a bunch of hobo bums, and then she'll defend Howland and everything. And she'll write a series of articles herself. So some of these quotes we're going to have are from her talking about it. So what happens is, and so Howland has this new pump in there. He has 300 acres of land. He starts putting in all sorts of crops, 20, 30 acres of fruit trees of different kinds. The type of crops we grow around here, but a lot of experimental crops. There's a crop called Conagra that he grows. I think it's pronounced that. And it's used for tanning. But it's typical. He puts in about 20 acres of it. It's typical with Shalam. As soon as that crop is coming to market, a new method of tanning leather comes out.
God.
And they have to plow it under. Pests, frost will kill the fruit trees. Rabbit infestations, bugs will kill the fruit trees and other crops. So those attempts, all these attempts keep failing.
Yeah.
And but it becomes a showcase for the state. He's doing all this stuff. He's got these pumps and everything, and people are coming from the university, which at the time is very small. This is very early, so they're coming out there all the time, seeing what he's doing because they don't have the money for this stuff. So let's see what he can do. So Joan says we had the showplace for the whole state. All these vegetables and fruit orchards, 30 acres of vineyards, and all kinds of apricots and apples, plums and pears and walnuts and all that kind of stuff. And Howland did all of that. Now, he also will be credited with bringing the first Guernsey dairy cows to New Mexico territory.
I read that, and I was so surprised for vegan to do that.
Right. Well, so at this point, he's thinking, it's not like he's butchering them,
Right.
But you're right. He's now like, okay, let's look at industries that are in demand. What do they need here? They need dairy around here, right? And so he brings in 100 Guernsey cows from the Hordes Dairy in Wisconsin, in Governor Morton's farm in New York, and brings these all the way out here, these dairy cows, and sets up a whole thing, and a dairy. And a milk and butter processing plant, and only the best. See, Jones says only the best will do for Howland, so he spares nothing on this. He puts in, a whole thing for processing milk and butter and pasteurization and all that stuff. Like everything's just tight. Employs people to work the dairy, and they have a small. This is in late 1890. This is 1899 period. This is his last. This is the Hail Mary.
Okay.
So they set up Las Cruces and Shalam still aren't getting along. So he has to take his products, his butter and his milk, to El Paso.
Oh boy.
And so they have a little store in El Paso that they sell the Shalam dairy. There are all these neat, and this is another thing that we sort of knew about at the museum. And then a few years ago, I'm going to look at that dairy thing. And I don't know where this stuff was when we first looked at it, but out comes all these ads for the dairy. As I started looking in the El Paso papers, this huge article describing the dairy operation in great detail.
Wow.
I mean, all
What a
this stuff.
find.
Yeah, it was like, where was this when we were looking for it? And so I did an article for the El Paso Historical Society Password Journal in 2018 on this dairy stuff.
Very cool.
But the dairy ends up failing.
You're kidding.
Well, they sell it. There's this whole story about how difficult it is to get butter to El Paso.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah,
Makes sense.
You
Yeah.
can imagine. And other reasons that people were selling butter, calling it Shalam butter, and it wasn't. And this is sort of like organic before organic was organic.
Okay.
This is like pure. They really sell and it's sold in health stores and stuff. But anyway, so this ends up failing too. Right. So the 1900 census. Without looking into all this, this is the census of the Shalam. So we know everyone who's out there. There's 25 orphans. We know where they came from, where they were born. So now we know they came from Louisiana, they came from Kansas City, they came from Boston, some of them, where they were brought here. So that initial group of 10, they're added on to. So eventually there's 25 by the time of 1900. And the colony has to close. Howland is tapped out. We have to close. And so this, of course, ends up in the news. You see in the Albuquerque Tribune, the Shalam Colony, history of the freaks in Doña Ana County, blah, 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 the end of Shalam. All this ends up everywhere. This is in the Kansas City Tribune, the end of Shalam Colony. So it's just, and so what ends up has to happen is Howland has to sue the church. He has to sue the orphans.
Oh, boy.
So here's the lawsuit. There's Joan talking about it. I know we're running low on time here. So here's the lawsuit. He actually has to sue the orphans to get back the land.
Yeah.
And then so he can sell off the land. 10 of the orphans are sent to an orphanage in Denver. Another 10 are sent to an orphanage in Dallas. Many of these children apparently die within a year of arriving because they're on this new diet and this whole new thing. 3 of the girls we see here actually stay here with the Howlands. They've kind of become attached to them, I suppose, and they grow up here and marry local men and become part of the community and stuff. One of the boys that they also take in is actually a Las Cruces baby, and he ends up staying here anyway. And then they end up, he tries to sell the land. He creates what's called the Shalam Planning Company, and here's where the spelling of Shalam. So if you go to Shalam Colony is with an E, so it's Shalam with an E rather than the 2 A's.
Yes.
And so they do that for 2 reasons. One, numerology shows that too many A's in a name makes it weak somehow, or there's something to do with that.
Yeah.
And also to differentiate this company from the colony itself. They don't want to call it the colony. So this was just a name change for those reasons. And that's why we see the difference now in Shalam Colony Trail. And so the colony eventually, he sells off the land by 1907 or so. He ends up in El Paso and he dies in 1917. The buildings start to fall into disrepair. People start going out and plucking windows off of the fraternum, doors off. So there is Shalam stuff all around the valley in people's homes probably.
Wow.
I mean, in wherever. So this is the same building. There's the fraternum by the 40s or so.
Wow.
So it's all fallen into disrepair, into rubble. It's being used kind of, not really, as a barn. And then eventually it crumbles, and by the 60s or so, and now a processing plant sits on top of it. The children's home eventually is used as a barn. It's torn down in 1973, and people go out and pluck all this brick. There's just huge brick. Yeah. So when we were doing the exhibit, we were looking for artifacts and anything from Shalam. We didn't have anything. It's just anything. We do anything. And we never really found too much. And then later on, I was doing a history of my folks' house, and they live about a mile from Shalam. And I was interviewing the woman who once lived in our house, and she lives by the Shalam Colony. So I said, well, you know anything about Shalam? Just ask. And she said, well, actually, when they tore down that big building, we went out and took a bunch of the bricks from it and brought it out to your house.
Oh.
Wow.
And I knew exactly the bricks she was talking about because those bricks were sitting around this tree on my parents' house. So here are these bricks that
you were meant to do.
I know. I'm like, here are these bricks that I have. I went out and collected them all up, and here are these bricks from 1890 that had been sitting there the whole time, and they would have ended up in our exhibit had I known about
That's
that.
crazy.
But eventually, that's torn down. And so, Faithism today, or where is this faith today? So there are some Faithists.
There are.
There are some.
Okay.
And so there's some different groups that went off, and they started to start some stuff in California and Colorado, but very small group. And really, Faithism would be more like it's inspired by Oahspe. And so basically, it's vegetarian lifestyle, and then also doing for others. Service is a big part for Faithists. Living a productive service-based life. Really.
Right.
And in terms of history, if you wanted to read about it, I would recommend Lee Priestley's book. That's sort of the definitive account of Shalam. It's got all sorts of stuff that we didn't cover here because you can't get it all in because there's too much.
Right.
But you can still find her book online and probably at Coas too. I think it's out of print. And there have been dozens, if not hundreds, of articles written about Shalam through the years. So, and even NMSU has a website, kind of an online exhibit, I suppose, a Shalam. So if you went NMSU Shalam Colony, they have several web pages on that.
Cool.
Very cool.
And that's it.
Well, one of the records that we found was this marriage record. Can you tell us a little bit about this one?
Yeah, so this is the marriage. So what happens is that Andrew and Frances will marry to supposedly put an end to salacious gossip, whatever. So they're married in 1893, and so you all have the actual record of that wedding that was done out at Shalam. And so we have everybody there and all the witnesses that are there, and some of these names are interesting. And at the very top of the witnesses is a man by the name of John B. Newbrough, who 2 years ago died. So
Was it his ghost?
If you
It
believe in
says
the
he was-
spirit world.
that you need to do that first.
That's right.
So it says he was there.
Interesting.
So, and this is an official document from the county, so we know that that's the real
Must
deal.
be, yeah.
Wow, crazy stuff.
That is wild.
Pretty
You know,
cool.
and this is full of wild stuff. Shalam's a great story.
What a topic. What a
Yes.
topic.
Thank
I want to thank you so much for coming and
Thank you.
sharing
Thank you.
Thank you
this
for having
story.
me.
Yeah, it was great.
Incredible. So much to it. I think we did an episode, one of our first episodes
Right.
about Shalam Colony, but we didn't know just how much there
The
was
depth
to
to this
Oh,
story.
boy. And there's other directions you can go with this. I believe it or not, I was trying to be concise here. I really did try, but
it. Awesome.
it's one of those things. I get excited about, so
That's awesome. Thank you so much for coming. This is
Absolutely.
amazing.
Thanks for having me.
Of course.
And thanks for doing what you guys do. here
Thank
with
you.
This podcast is fantastic. You're really doing the deal with the local history stuff, and you have quite the collection. You have about 40 or 50 of these.
Well, that does it for this episode of Preserving History and Democracy. We want to thank our special guest once again, Mr. Christopher Schurtz, for joining us. I want to thank Bernadine Caparel, our amazing producer, for bringing us another amazing topic.
Yes, thank you so much.
Of course. And we want to thank Jacob Slaughter behind cameras for all that he does. Make sure to follow us on all our social media platforms and listen to us wherever you listen to podcasts. We'll see you next time.